Hello everyone and welcome back to the good stuff. We are continuing our journey on the Paul Morphy saga and we are continuing the match Samuel Standish Boden versus Paul Charles Morphy. And we've left it off after showing three games from this match, but we are going to show a few more before we go to Morphy's match against Mr. Barnes, and then of course to his match or no match against Howard Staunton, or Staunton, as some of you said that I should pronounce it. But before we check out this game, I would just like to mention that if you are only now joining us in the Paul Morphy saga, we've only started, basically we've only just started, I think so far there are like 28 videos. So I will put a link to all of the videos from the saga in the description below, so you can join in if you're interested. And also, I would just like to mention that AGADMATOR made another video regarding basically it's a fun short video which is basically an intro for my podcast with Hikaru Nakamura. Do check it out. The link to it will be in the description below. It's the first thing you'll see, so do check it out. Pretty wild stuff. But now getting back to this game, it's a great game because Morphy gets a terrible position straight out of the opening and then he has to suffer. But it's very interesting because it's Morphy. So Boden goes for e4, Morphy replies with e5, we have knight f3, knight to c6 and bishop to b5. And Morphy goes for the Berlin defense, knight to f6, not for a6 Morphy's defense. And Boden goes d4, the immediate strike in the center, Morphy captures on d4 and now e5. Now this is a very rare continuation today. But it is still played nowadays. Only now after d5 you will most likely see knight to e4, or in some rare occasions maybe knight to g4. But knight to d5 is a move that was never played again after this game, and with good reasons, as the knight is very vulnerable on d5, which Boden will show. So here Boden just castles, and Morphy also wants to continue his development, so he plays bishop to c5. He wants to castle his king to safety. Finish development, sort of. And here, c3. Now, asking, do you want to grab another pawn and further help white develop pieces? Now, you could go for some like d captures on c3 here, but it would be kind of silly because the knight on d5 is hanging. So instead, Morphy just castles to safety, and now c captures on d5. Boden gets a very strong center, attacks the bishop. Morphy retreats it to b6. Maybe to e7 was a bit safer, as white has plans of going bishop to g5 after the queen. But okay, bishop to c4 now. Boden loses a tempo. He already played with the bishop, but the knight doesn't really have all that many squares here, and you have to be very careful not to lose a piece here. For example, if you just move the knight back, let's say you go knight to e7, you get the d5, and that's a problem. Now this knight has no squares. This is covered by the knight and the queen. The knight covers this, and if you go something like knight to a5, white will just move the bishop, let's say bishop to d3, and next move b4 just wins a piece. So it doesn't really help you. If you try something like knight captures here to sort of guard b4, then there's just bishop captures on h7 completely winning, king captures and knight g5 with the well-known mating attack after king moves queen h5 and so on, or queen to d3 with the same idea. So, after bishop to c4, Morphy has to be very careful. Morphy defends the knight instead of moving it. So, knight c to e7, but Boden continues in great style. Bishop to g5, just pins the knight. Again, there's the threat of bishop captures, since this knight will not be able to recapture. And again, you have to be very careful. For example, h6, with the idea that if bishop moves, you're going to play g5 and so on, is met with bishop captures on d5, and now after h captures, Boden had knight captures on g5 planned. And now again, black's position is terrible, especially if you go after the bishop, then just queen h5 wins the game on the spot. There's no defense against this. You have to give up the queen just to prolong the game. So after bishop to g5, we have queen to e8, the strongest move, and now finally you can start remaneuvering these knights. And rook to e1 by Boden. It's a good move. And finally h6. Now you can play this, bishop to h4, and now knight to f4. Preparing to shift this knight either to g6 or maybe to d5, depending on what white plays. So Boden continues developing. We have knight to c3. And now knight to f5 by Morphy. And okay, Morphy was able to get out of the mess, but his position is still very shaky. However, he is threatening the bishop on h4, but Boden doesn't care. Boden goes bishop to d2, he attacks the knight on f4. So Morphy retreats, knight back to g6, now creating a double attack on the bishop on h4, but Boden still doesn't care. Boden just goes knight to e4. And it's a really, really nice idea. He's offering Morphy a full piece. For example, if knight, let's say knight captures on h4, you're gonna recapture, and then the position is lost for black now. However, it's especially lost if you capture the knight here. Do you see what Boden had in mind? Even pause the video and try to figure it out, as it's quite the idea. While I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting the fork. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's knight to f6 check. This checks the king and forks the queen. And now if you don't want to lose the queen, you have to pick up the knight. So after g captures, queen captures on h6. And now there are a lot of dangers here. For example, it's very hard to defend. Rook e3 to g3 just wins the game on the spot. You cannot bring the knight back to help out with the defense because the queen can just capture it. The bishop prevents the f-pawn from capturing. It's impossible to defend here. If you try something like bishop captures on d4 to guard the e3 square, you still get rook to e4 with the same idea of just rook going to g4. And if you try something like f5 to prevent this, then just rook captures on h4 and black is still getting checkmated. So Morphy has to be very careful here, but Morphy is not one to be tricked easily, so Morphy just goes d5. He counterattacks in the center, now with an attack against the bishop and the knight. So Boden is forced to capture en passant here. So e captures on d6, and now queen to d7. Again, a very important move, as knight to f6 check now does pick up the queen. So queen to d7 by Morphy, and now Boden still doesn't care. Now, if this was some sort of a modern game, White would say, okay, I attacked fiercely, but now it's time to cool off a bit, maybe bishop to g3, maybe go bishop to e7, make the trade happen on e7. However, Boden continues the attack with knight to e5, like a madman. And now, your queen is under attack, the knight is under attack, so knight captures here is a threat, as this is, you still have the issue of the f-pawn not being able to recapture. So Morphy, of course, has to capture the knight. So he goes knight captures on e5, we have d captures on e5, and now he grabs the bishop with knight captures on h4, and Boden continues in great style. However, it's a bit different now. Morphy again goes for knight to f6 check. Checks the king, forks the queen, and Morphy has to capture the knight. So g captures, but now there's a difference, because if queen captures on f6 now, then Morphy has queen g4. And not only do you stop any rook e4 ideas, but you're also just threatening checkmate. So in order for White to prevent this, you either have to play something weird, or let's say bishop to f1 to defend this, but now just knight f3 check. The pawn cannot capture, you're gonna win the rook, so after king here, you're just gonna pick up the rook, and after rook captures, you can go queen g5, force a queen trade, and you're of course doing much better. So after g captures on f6, of course, Boden did not go for queen captures on h6. He saw that this doesn't lead to anything. Instead, e6, he prevents the queen from guarding the g4 square, and now is planning rook to e4 to g4, and hopefully can still just capture on h6. Morphy captures on d6. It's a great move. And now you have to either go queen captures on h6, which Boden played, or you could go for something like captures on f7 check first, but then king g7, and you no longer have the option of going here. So Boden captured on h6, but now Morphy just plays bishop captures on e6. He says there's no problem here. Problem is, if queen captures on h4, then you can just go rook f to e8, and you can bring your king to safety. You've freed up some squares here, but you're also just up a full piece, so no compensation for White here. No real compensation, at least. So after bishop captures on e6, Boden captured on e6. He did open up Morphy's king a little bit with f captures on e6, and only now brings the rook into the game with rook to e4, threatening some nice ideas. However, Morphy just brings the knight back with knight to f5. And now the queen is under attack, and you don't really have all that many plans here. Rook to g4 check was played, but after king to f7, Boden saw that there was no way to continue the attack, and it was in this position on move 24 that Samuel Standish Boden resigned the game, and yet another victory for Paul Charles Morphy. I just realized I miswrote Charles, but okay, I mean, what are you gonna do? So a great victory for Paul Morphy. And we are going to continue the match for a little bit. I think I'm going to show 2 more games from this match before continuing, before going to the match with Mr. Barnes. So here you resign, as there is nothing more to do. Of course, you could continue with a check. Let's say Queen H7 check, but after King E8, there's no continuation here. This knight just does a wonderful job of defending. And if you try something like Rook E1 with maybe ideas of Queen captures, then just Queen D2 is sufficient. You can even allow this. Rook captures, King can move, and there's still nothing here. The knight just does a wonderful job, and well, this is now a threat. Just Queen D1, Queen C1, threats of checkmate. It's not possible to continue this for white. So Boden agrees, and he resigns here. That's another game from the match of Boden Morphy. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Karunesh Sachanandani, Peter Anton, Marco Pizzato, Max Meyer-Holzner, and William Gould for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the Morphy saga, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. And do check out the video I mentioned. The link is in the description below. See you soon.